morning, everybody. This is Coach Kerr with the Elvis Cully Fight Team, doing an episode of the Fight House Talks podcast, and we'll be joined by my good friend Clive. Clive, I'm going to say Cliver because there was a bit of a mess up on the flyer. This is what I get for doing things late at night. So, anyways, I'm going to bring Clive on. He's from the Hastings Dojo over there in East Sussex, England, and yeah, we're just going to dive right into this. Clive, my friend, what's going on, homie?
Hey, buddy, thank you for this. It's really fun. And yeah, Clive, that's absolutely fine. I unofficially ADHD, and Clive makes Clive a doing word. So I like that because, yeah, I'm forever doing. So it's just gone 8 o'clock at night over here, and I'm sitting here drinking Coke. But yeah, I've been saying I've had a really busy day, whereas you're over there drinking coffee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do what we got to do because, coffee is the water of life.
I forgot to say, happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my wife and I celebrate our 17th year, and it was great. And she puts up with all my sarcasm and encourages it and all my Klingon stuff. So, yeah.
Stick collections.
Yeah, you know.
I've been married a whole, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, so a whole 5 months now. So, yeah.
Hey. No, it's great.
Still going strong.
Yeah, it's excellent. So, Clive, tell us the story of who you are, because I don't know how much the community actually knows who you are, although you are like one of the most positive, supportive people in our collective martial arts community. And one of the things I like doing with this particular podcast is give back and thanks for those who in generally support and positive and just being good people in the community, because we need that kind of leadership. And there's so much trolling in the community, and having somebody who's so positive and supportive of everybody else it's a wonderful thing. And so with that, I like to give my gratitude to those who do that, an opportunity to say, hey, who I am and this is what I do. So with that long-winded thing, Cliver, let's tell the audience who you are.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So no, it's nice that you think of me as positive as well, because it can be quite dark out there, and that's kind of how I got into the Filipino community, and we'll come across that in a bit, was when it was the dark days of COVID. So I was born in 1973, many moons ago, and so about 1980 I started martial arts. My dad was a flyweight boxer in the military, and was pretty good, but only started boxing because you got extra rations. So, we like our food in this family. And he taught me to box, but I wasn't particularly good, didn't particularly enjoy it, don't like getting hit in the face that much. Even as a kid, and 50 years later, I still don't like getting hit in the face that much. But in Britain in the 80s, there wasn't much of a martial arts choice. We had your boxing, you had your judo, and you had a couple of karate schools. So I next moved on to judo and got through to the flute-flavored belts in judo. I did it for a couple of years, but being short and fat, judo's weight categories, I ended up getting tall, skinny guys. And so, it wasn't really working for me. And then from that, the only other choice then was karate. So I did karate up until my mid-teenage years. And I got a black belt through that under a local sensei called John Wilson and Bernard Cretan. Back in 1989, I reckon. I was doing some research, and I think it was about 89 was when I got that. And then, as things do, life calms down a little bit in the martial art world. I was partying a little bit. I rode motorbikes for quite a few years and went to an awful lot of interesting parties. But through that, I realized that the world had changed. Oh, thank you, Harry. Through that, I realized the world had changed. And so I wanted to learn some weapon-based arts. And it was right in the middle of the ninja boom, which was handy for me. So I went off and I learned from two of the different ninjutsu grandmasters, Hatsumi and Ashino. And then I ended up getting a black belt in ninjutsu back in about 96, I think. And then through that, I met my instructor, who was a Goshin Jiu-Jitsu instructor at the time. Oh, I've just gone big. And so he then introduced me to Jiu-Jitsu from a different way. Yeah, hi, Mark. Yeah, I'll mention you later. And so, he then introduced me to Jiu-Jitsu. And we were in different organizations. World Kabuto was the biggest one at the time for Jiu-Jitsu over here. And then we wanted something slightly different. As with all martial arts, we all talk about the politics. We don't want anything to do with politics, yet it's constantly all we talk about. And so we left all the organizations that we were with, so John Biggs, Hanshi John Biggs, and Hanshi Terry Hall set up Shinpei Izumi Dojo, which was a bit of a cross culture. It's Japanese Goshin Jiu-Jitsu, but especially at the time, we trained with everybody and everything. I was incredibly lucky, as we kind of mentioned when we were chatting. He used to write for all the British martial art press. So we don't have a lot of it over here. We got Black Belt magazine, but that was a bit pointless us reading it because we can't go to Daniel Santos seminars or anything like that. So we had Fighters and Steve Grayson's Martial Arts and Combat and Martial Arts Illustrated, and he used to write for them. And at the time, there weren't many people that dealt with the unusuals. So if it was just getting punched or thrown, then that was okay. There was lots of different authors that were doing with that bit. But so we used to get called in to go over and meet all of these new people that were coming up. All this new, what's this, the Scrimme and Salat and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guys and I still think it's pronounced Kilise, Phil Norman's school and things like that. And we got to meet all these guys when they were starting off and learning their art and came over here and started to teach it. And that was brilliant. Because there was absolutely no pressure on me whatsoever as Hanshizuki. I was just the guy that got taken along and beaten up. So as long as I screamed in the right places and fell over in the right places, I then got to learn off of all these masters that were willing to teach us so that he could then write about them and then they would get some publicity over here. So I met hundreds of different great martial arts instructors, most of which wouldn't have a clue who the hell I was because I was the little guy getting thrown around. And I have changed my hair over the years. Being a biker, of course, it was incredibly long. And then every time he used to get me to competitively fight, we grade one it so that there was nothing there. And then I'd grow it back. So if people think, people might recognize me as being bald, people might recognize me as being the hairy biscuit. So yeah, it's what. So I used to sneak in under the radar, but the short, enthusiastic guy with tattoos tends to get people. I think I remember you, but yeah, from what you said earlier, the positivity thing. Thank you. That seems to have been something that's stuck. My passion for doing this, and that seems to be one of the things that people have remembered, and so they let us in. So that Hanshi, there's some videos of Hanshi out there on my site as well, but also on different sites. He was on the World of Martial Art podcast because, evening Anthony, that's my sensei. Is in my dojo, Sensei Tony. So I just did. So yeah, that'd be nice. I do it. I've got to, but I'll come on to the boudoir guys later because that's about where the community have been amazing to me. So yeah, I got to meet and train with all these brilliant people, and then now I kind of have to be the person giving it back. Which is a little bit weird because although I'm 50 and got all the fancy belts and stuff, I'm still a beginner. And in regards to the Filipino one, because we say it all the time, and I've got a white belt in my bag, and I take that along so that I can wear it. But yeah, I'm a Yakon Isa in Petit Tesia that I got a couple of years ago, which was brilliant. Thank you, I really appreciate that from two on Jared and Angle on Willie. I had some great evenings with Willie chatting over the internet and video and stuff. But yeah, I'm possibly the least qualified Filipino martial artist that you've had on here that actually is a Filipino martial artist. So because my Japanese martial arts is my fifth dan and my big belts and my big posh thing. But then the Filipino arts is where I get to be a complete student. Oh, thank you, Marcus. I get to be a complete student and I know absolutely nothing. And the white belt mentality and just when you go to Japanese martial arts, there's a bit of punching and a bit of kicking and a bit of locking and a bit of throwing. But when you go to the Filipino martial, I've got absolutely no idea what's going to happen. It could be single stick or double stick or dumo or anything insane that wants to come out of the box. And I have no choice but to take as much in as I can and get, boom, that explosion again that you get from being a beginner. And so that's great. And I think that helps me get invited to other things because my instructor, Hanshi, was very calm, very relaxed. He was pretty chilled all the time. And you might have spotted I'm a bit of a Jack Russell. I'm all jumpy and excited about everything. But I give that out to the world and it seems to come back to me. So I'm more than happy if that's what people remember of me, that the enthusiastic guy that wanted to have a play and have a chat and get on the mats rather than just talk about it. That's where I'm comfortablest. So I'm a complete physical wreck, but that's where I'm still happiest.
Well, the thing what's interesting, that's an awesome background. We're going to go back a ways in a little bit. But what is interesting about culture, mentality, and just the way people present themselves, I mean, especially now on social media, but just in interaction, is you got the people who show up to the seminars and just like, I'm going to sit in the stance and just argue with your brain and just have such like a negative outlook, and you can clearly tell they're there not to participate. And then you
Yeah.
get the people that are just excited to be there because, and that energy itself is, it catches on,
Yeah.
and as does the negativity catch on because,
Mm.
I mean, you have a choice. You have a choice to be an asshole, or you have a choice not to be one when
Yeah.
you come into
Yeah.
these communities. And honestly, it's just, I find now, because there's, especially because of the internet, everybody is just is an authority. Everybody's a subject matter expert. Everybody's got a platform to
Yeah.
spew out whatever crap they're going to throw out, like here. But it costs you nothing to be kind. It costs you
Yeah.
nothing to be
Yeah.
a pleasant human being, and it costs you nothing for to be generally excited about stuff. And so,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it goes back to that little principle of you're more likely to catch more flies with honey than vinegar. I mean,
Definitely.
and so with
Definitely.
that, it's definitely better to show up with a good attitude, because even you get
Yeah.
access to things with a good attitude. Because when you're being here and confrontational, because like, and you also can tell for the people who've been there, done that, and especially where they're in that phase of their mental health and maturity, is if they've been there, done that, they have nothing to prove, and they can just enjoy what they're doing,
Mm.
enjoy the moment,
Yeah.
enjoy being present. Versus who somebody is still like stuck in that competitive ego mindset of like, oh, I can do this better, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like,
Yeah.
they're not there, and they're the wrong people to be there, anyways.
Yeah,
So
they're not taking away what's going on at the seminar. They're not
yeah,
there to be a sponge and soak up whatever people are willing to give them. Because
yeah,
I can only speak for this country. I don't know that
yeah.
over a bit. I've travelled a lot. I travelled in Africa and a bit of America, but
Uh-huh.
we in this country. We still have a traditional mindset, and that's
Uh-huh.
where when I talk about traditional martial arts over here, I tend to say Japanese, but it
Yeah.
means all of the traditional versions of the martial arts. The people turn up, they got the nice fancy belts, they walk around going, yeah, grades don't matter, and they don't once you've got that black belt, but when you're trying to get that certain recognition, yeah, it matters a hell of a lot, and it should. Otherwise, you wouldn't be putting the hours and the work in to try and get that belt. But
Yeah.
then, we get people to rest on their laurels, walk around sitting on holding their belt, saying it should be done this way and that way. And well, prove it to me. I don't need to pressure test everything, but I want to play. So,
Yeah.
and the way that I learn, I've got a huge book collection. I love collecting books, but I need the physicality of it. So I had a very, very good motorbike accident quite a few years ago, and I lost the ability to read and imagine at the same time. So when people read, good readers like Harry Potter people and stuff like that, they can read and imagine the dragon doing the thing in the background. I can't. I can read it and take the words in, and then I have to go away, think about it, and that's when it comes up. And it kind of helps me how the traditional martial art books are, with the black and white photos of the people doing that, and then just stab them that way. That helps me because that works on my brain. Whereas if I'm just reading a load of words, it's not going to stick in. And the same with conversations. If we were closer, if there wasn't the internet separating us, I'd just go, come on, let's go on the mat, and then you can show me. And that's the way I'll learn physically, with that connection. And the connection, I think, is what the Filipino community does spectacularly well. And if you're quite happy with me to bring it around to that, when the Filipino community and me got involved, although I'd been training in it with my instructor since about 96, 97, I hadn't really been concentrating because I was still doing my Japanese stuff. And I was still a lot to learn in the Japanese world of the Iaido and all of the different bits that I do as well, the Kendo and the Jiu-Jitsu. COVID came along and kicked in, and suddenly we had to be separated from each other. And that's when I then started reaching out to people on the internet, because I'm at home. It's hard for me to do jiu-jitsu if I haven't got someone to grab hold and twist. But if I've got, I can stay at home and I can practice angle ones and twos till the cows come home. And I made myself a dummy called COVID Colin that lives out the back of my house. So that I could practice with someone whilst we went. And so that's when I then started reaching out to the Filipino community, because I started to get more interested in it, and it seemed the best thing to be able to learn at distance. And so all of the, what I would consider that sound like the founding fathers over there of your two Angelinas, and everybody. Jared, I wrote a list there, didn't I? I wrote a list of all of the American guys, but everybody basically I messaged them and they sent me back stuff to play with. And it was just, I don't have money, but I'll have a little bit of time, but I'll have
Mhm.
enthusiasm for you. So with two Angelinas, for instance, I saw a video of his Dirty Dozen. So I went
Yeah.
outside and played with it for a couple of days. And then I sent it to him and said, can you pick holes in this and send it back to me? And he did.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford to pay him to come out. I couldn't go to America and go for a session with him, but he did that for me for free over the internet whilst we were sitting
Yeah.
there, and gave me tips on how to make it better. And then all of you guys, Paolo Rubio,
Yeah.
I've had some really
Yeah.
good conversations with him and the Boudoir boys, where I
Mhm.
did a couple of evening sessions with the Boudoir guys. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning over here during COVID, but they were willing to invite me into these things. Two on Jack the tour.
Mhm.
If the people are willing to take a chance on me, I will do whatever I can to learn from them because they've got
Yeah.
something to give. So, and through that, I've learned so many different bits that it's helped me to get a better understanding of it. And I certainly am not going to be spectacular and I'm not going to be technically perfect, but I think who is?
And that's such a misnomer about what is good technique. Because I mean, we could define it as biomechanical efficiency, but that's so
Hmm.
boring and technical. But the fact is, there's proficiency and perfection. Perfection is a pursuit of a lifelong uh, approach to stuff. And
Yeah,
you're gonna get perfect for you, good for you, but your body's in a
yeah,
constant state of change, well, due to
God, yeah,
age, injury, and whatnot. So perfection is a lifelong pursuit. So
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
if you make it work for you within the principles of the scope of fighting, sure, that works great. But honestly, just like in all things, your experiences matter to you.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
martial arts journey matters to you and no one
yeah.
else. So,
And angle one is going to be an angle one no matter who teaches it, and whatever
yep.
you want to call it. Yeah, it's still going to be ones and twos regardless. And yeah, the what matters to you, I think is huge, and I think
Mhm.
that's possibly what we got from, and I'm talking about 50-year-olds, that the next generation hasn't got, and possibly, yeah, if we want to
Mhm.
call them the post-COVID generation hasn't got. If I wanted to train in anything when I was growing
Mhm.
up, I had to get off. I'm not allowed to swear. I had to get off my butt and go and do it,
Yep.
which meant me as a kid being on a push bike, going off to the dojo, or getting on a train, or begging my
Mhm.
parents to take me somewhere, and then going and doing that. And if I wanted to train with Bob Breen, who trained with Daniel Santo, I had to get on a
Mhm.
train and go to a course and spend a day doing it, and then writing everything down, which is my pet love, is writing what I learned down, and then coming back and then practicing it. Um, I had to give myself in order to learn the stuff that they were willing to give me. Now I can type into YouTube, teach me how to do whatever it is, and 64 attacks. Teach me how to do 64 attacks, and it will pop up on my screen, and I'll do it, but I
Mhm.
won't have put myself into it, so it won't have stuck, and I won't have put the passion and the enthusiasm into it, and
Mhm.
I won't remember it.
There's no personal
Genuinely, that,
connection to it. There is no
yeah,
personal connection. So aside from the technical stuff, particular to whatever thing, whether it's ballet, martial arts, automotive, whatever it is, what I'm finding with the life of the internet is, yeah, you can get all the technical information, but there is the lack of the emotional context
yeah,
and connection to it. That journey of like a positive memory,
yeah,
because like some of the best memories that I have growing up in the martial arts is going to tournaments and training for fights with my adoptive father. So, and that is
yeah,
that connection. Now with the
yeah.
internet, I mean, there, yeah,
No,
the
go
internet,
to.
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say somebody way smarter than us said in the 70s, you need emotional connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and just that it builds that stronger memory attached to the activity. There's that investment. And
Yeah,
when I talk about experiences, when I talk about like the summation of your life is your experiences. To grow is to experiences. You have to how with the internet, there's a disconnect to the experience. There's like we're interacting
hmm,
now, but
yeah,
there's not the hands-on multiple sensory inputs
yeah,
of that experience. So, and I'm finding that with this new age of martial arts online, is people are lacking that's the physical multi-input
yeah,
connection to what they're doing.
yeah, yeah. And Todd Fossey, I'm not a gun person. I've shot
Hmm.
one gun once. That we don't have them over here.
Yeah.
But Todd because I was talking to him about it, he told me about myelination and sent me some books to read and started on that. And he go, yeah, this makes perfect sense. And it is, yeah, genuinely it is. You've got, we know about the mind, body, spirit. We've been talking about it for years, but how many of us actually train in those different sections when we're doing it together? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. The internet has been a beautiful and powerful tool, but I find what I would like to see is a hybridization of people actually getting out and doing the thing and building that content and that context to that physical skill set and memory, but also having the backlog. Because the other thing was great about the internet and just the digital medium is we can actually record and go back and see what we're doing, because it's really hard to correct yourself or correct somebody while you're actively engaged in the physical activity, because there's so much data coming in. So having the video work afterwards, that's incredibly useful. So it's a give and take.
It's not pleasant. So I started. If you watch on my channel, I've got over in Cheeky the history of me, and it's old video footage that I shot with a proper old camera of my instructor teaching in the events, and I'm very rarely in them because I'm the one holding the camera. But we need that to be able to look back on. And when I first started videoing my lessons, because my dojo has been going 25 years last year, it was the big celebration for blimey, going 25 years. And when I first looked back at the videos, I didn't let my students get a chance to do anything. I'd say to them, right, we're going to do this technique. And then as soon as they put hands on each other, I'd go, no, you're doing that wrong. We've got to do that. We've got to do that. We've got to. And they didn't. Whereas now I know, give them the technique, go away, let them practice. And then I can then step in and slightly change things. But I need them, but back to that emotional content thing, I need them to find the journey themselves. So if they don't get there, if they don't invest themselves, if I just give them the answers to the universe, they're not going to want it. They're not going to think it's worth anything. So I need them to find the answers to the universe themselves that I slightly lead them towards, and then they feel really cool about it because they then found it and they then remember it. So I'm a really, really, really bad musician as well. I like to play guitar. And if I can pick up my guitar and type in anything and play along with the chords, it's nice and simple. But if there's a song I particularly want to learn, I have to learn it properly, step by step. Yeah, I do record on my sessions, Gary. Thank you. He's one of my guys. I have to remember it. If I'm to like Blackbird by the Beatles, for instance, it's really, really tough, but I remember it. So, but I then don't have to think about playing it. I can just pick up the guitar and do ding, 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 ding. Whereas if it's just a tab song and I don't invest any of myself into it, I can just sit there and play it. And as soon as it's gone in one ear, it's fallen out the other. So, yeah, we need to invest ourselves into these things. So, you're seeing pictures of me shooting as well. So,
yeah, sharing out your social media. So,
cool. But, thank you. Well, yeah. That's it. As well as Japanese martial arts and Filipino martial arts, I've been an archer all my life as well. So yeah, we do that over here. So it's no better way to see the British woodland than with a bow in your hand, apart from maybe a pipe in your hand.
Everybody's trying to tap into that Robin Williams, not Robin Williams, the Robin Hood. I mean Robin Williams as well.
Yeah,
I'm full of like Freudian clips today. So
yeah, it's the Monty Python thing. I've got you stuck on that. So yeah, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, there was a period where you could walk into any British pub and just say anything. He's not the Messiah. He's a naughty boy, and the entire pub would then carry on the rest of the film. So yeah, you'd fit at home over here, Kurt.
My favorite is to like interject this is my litmus test with how I can determine somebody's cool and we can be friends, is I either let slip something like a Klingon joke from Star Trek or a Monty Python joke, especially within the nerd community, because let's face it, martial artists are big nerds. Why would we spend 20, 30 years getting beat up learning how to play with swords in pajamas? I mean,
yeah, and if we do it right, we never have to do it. We never have to do these things. So you wouldn't learn to play football and then never kick a ball about. But yeah, you do it we do it in martial arts. So yeah.
So my back to my litmus test to see whether or not I can be friends with a person is throwing out a Monty Python reference and see if they catch it. And I can't tell you how many people just don't get it, and it hurts my heart. It just does.
In this day and age as well, I'm definitely a nerd, Gary, you know that. So I'm more of a Star Wars nerd than a Trekkie. But in this day and age, I think we need to laugh at ourselves possibly more than we ever needed to laugh at ourselves and not take life so seriously. So because there's too many people, even when it's exactly right, we do this, we practice. Murder came murder, destroy. We're going to do all sorts of horrible things to people, and if we actually did it, we'd be in prison.
Yeah.
We're not going to need it. And if we're the right sort of people, the martial artists that I've known that are the top level, been doing it all their lives, that are the nicest, kindest people on the planet. They're never going to hurt anybody, and nobody is going to want to hurt them. So they yeah, I live by the Mark Denny rules of don't be around stupid people doing stupid things in stupid places. As long as you avoid that, you don't have to. But yeah, I'd say there's been altercations in my life, but no one's ever decided that's it. They're going to take me out for the love of God.
And again, this is where the skill sets of de-escalation is being approachable and not being outwardly offensive and aggressive is a big part of that. And so humor is healing, and humor and sarcasm is also a way to create create a gap and also build a bridge. And I find that in the martial arts community, there's a lot of people who tap into that, and they're the people who we really gravitate toward. And then there's a lot of other people, because of mental health issues and maturity, that get stuck in that egocentric, aggressive mentality, and they just don't have a sense of humor, and they just take themselves way too seriously because, for one, they are men and women unfulfilled, and unfortunately they're men and women unblooded and untested. And there's a lot to be said about people who actually have been there, done that, to really pull back from that. Well, I don't need to be so intense. I don't need to be so aggressive about it, because in the end of all of it, what's the big why? Why am I doing this in the first place, and why am I being an asshole? So
my ego is never. We get it all. Everybody gets to drive in incidents and stuff like that. When then you just, as long as you then go, well, that person could be having the worst day of their entire life. They just cut me up for a reason, and I can't remember the posh name for it. Todd Fossey will ever go at me for it for not remembering it. But it's as if you do it, it's for a good reason. But if they do exactly the same thing, it's for a bad reason, and so they're the worst, and you're the and but we got to be chill about stuff, and we've got to laugh at each other. Rowan Atkinson, wordplay. Being British, I like word humour. And so those are the sorts of things that we need. But I was also brought up at the time with George Carlin and Bill Hicks, and Dennis Leary. So we got word humour, but also with the political angle. And I still watch Bill Hicks to this day. I just changed the name of the politicians or the movie or the rock star that he's talking about, because it's exactly the same stuff's going on. So.
Yeah. So we're going to circle back to your history. Talk about been there and done that. So you got involved in some unsavory circles of people that have a means to inform your world outlook, and your personality, and more importantly, your approach to the martial arts, particularly to this conversation. So can we dive back into some of the interesting history of yours?
Some of the interesting bits, yeah. I mean, I spent a fair few years as a biker, so especially as those teenage years. So, and in Britain, it's a different biker culture to in the American biker culture. There's very close knits. There's lots of clubs, and I always wanted to be a free agent. And the pub that I grew up drinking in, the Carlisle's quite a famous one for the music scene. So people like Motorhead and Iron Maiden and Girl School, all these great British bands, all played there. And it was a tough little community. But then at weekends, I used to go off to other bike clubs around Britain and camp out and drink too much and play silly games. And you then get to see the side of the world that the other people don't. So I've been more than once inside certain Hells Angels enclosures and stuff like that. And at one end of the room, there's all sorts of nasty illegal things going on. Yet at the other end of the room, there's a load of Hells Angels sticking marshmallows in their mouth and playing chubby
having a good time.
That's it. But people only see that side of things. They don't see that side. But tell them about Meat and Lemmy. Yeah, thanks, Gary. I'll give you the $5 later, Gary. So doing all that stuff, I was around. There were some proper nasty people that you'd see, and even I've been at gigs and you see people walking by with machetes and knives and stuff like that, because that was the lifestyle that we lived. But I felt I wanted to learn about weapons at that point, because there came a point in my karate life about my brown belt time where I suddenly realized, as long as people played by my rules, I could win. But if they didn't play by my rules, I was in trouble.
Yep.
And so I stuck it out until I got my black belt, just because that's the thing that you all wanted. But my vision on life had already started changing. That no, there are different rules out there, and if you're playing by people that have got no rules, how the hell are you then going to win then? Because you can't stop them. And fights at that point, mid-90s in Britain, were still honourable, if that is such a word. It was between you and them, or a couple of people versus a couple of people. Even the football mechanism stuff, there would be clashes, but it wouldn't be one person versus all of his mates going around the outside of him, trying to everybody at once versus one poor soul in the middle. So there was bits of that I saw, but what Gary was alluding to, I was teaching at the Carlisle, so my dojo has changed a lot. And although we call it the Hastings Dojo, that's because that's where it started. And even I called it the Hastings Dojo when I was in Africa teaching out there. One of my students at the time, his dad was a Hell's Angel, and Motorhead, who I'm a big fan of, that's Lemmy's Ring, came and played our local, the White Rock Theatre, where one of my students, Clive, works at. And I went to see the band. I've seen them quite a few times, Motorhead. But whilst I was down there, the boy recognised me, and it was like, oh, Sensei, you're in the audience. Come and meet my dad. So, okay. And his dad was one of the angels doing security for Motorhead, because they tended to use the angels most of the time, Motorhead. And so I then got pulled over the barrier, and then I was on the side of the stage doing aikijitsu, which is like small circle jiu-jitsu, with these Hells Angels, whilst Lemmy and the boys were on stage playing. And I'm slightly deaf in this ear because Lemmy used to have a speaker with a hole cut out of it, and I put my head close-ish to it. It didn't go anywhere near it, just to see how loud it was, because I had the opportunity. And so yeah, I'm not at my best in this ear, which is possibly why you keep seeing me push the headphone back in that ear, because it's not as good as it would be. And then yeah, we went out with Lemmy and the boys afterwards, and I describe him, because I have a huge affection for the musicians, of course, that I grew up with, as an evil Santa, because he basically just sat on a chair all night, and they just brought one girl after another for photographs, and he just sat there drinking. At the time, he was drinking vodka and orange juice, because the Jack and Coke, because he'd been diabetic, and so yeah, they just kept bringing different girls and taking photographs, and he was just sat in there as bored as can be, just slowly drinking the night away. But it was immense. But even this week, I found out that we had Steve Harris from Iron Maiden was down the road this week. So Hastings has a huge tradition of live music. We used to be the place that everybody came to either before they went to Europe or when they came back. So we had Jimi Hendrix, for instance, played Hastings. He played on our pier. Pink Floyd, it was the last gig that Sid did before he walked off. We've had The Who. We've had everybody. And, of course, the Beatles are just down the road. So Paul McCartney's just down the road. So, yeah, we have Beatles days and things like that in Hastings. But that is a pub culture that we've got down here. And so on a Saturday night, if you walk along the seafront, because we live right on the south coast, you'll hear 15, 20 bands playing, and there'll be all sorts. You'll have like rock music to the heavy death metal-y stuff to folk music, and you can walk along drinking, finding the one that you want. And yes, alcohol does lead to a little bit of silliness, but as long as people are cool and you keep your wits about you, if things start to look a bit silly, if your spider sense is tingling, don't be there. So it's as simple as that. Get out of there. But on a set, we'll go back to the football thing. I'm Bob Marley. Yeah, Bob Marley played the Delaware as well, Gary. Yeah, so we had all these great names, and so then because of that, musicians now want to come and play here, because they can say, "Oh, I played at the same place as all these great people." I'm not a football person, and I'm not a rugby person, and to be English and say that is like really weird, because the first things most English people say when they meet you is, "Who do you support?" And I used to say like, "What? I don't support," so, and it throws them. They don't know what to do. But
It's
my
okay.
instructor,
I don't support the American sports ball either.
yeah,
There's not enough people getting punched in the face. So, but yeah, anyways.
oh, see, we have that. So yeah, we had all the joys of football hooliganism back in the 80s and 90s. And yeah, my instructor took me to see football gigs so that I could see the crowd violence and the crowd mentality. So we've got things like the Millwall brick over here, which is improvised weapons that we make up over here. And he took me, and I'd sit up in the balconies with him watching. Oh, that's look like that's turning in, and it looks a little bit like warfare where the people start going. And then when you go and watch rugby live, that really looks like Lord of the Rings warfare when they're going at each other. So yeah, don't forget Kevin Bloody Wilson. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tony. So yeah, we have a famous Australian musician that plays Hastings a lot, and I've met him and his family, and they're stunning. Kevin Bloody Wilson and his daughter Jenny Taylor. So and yeah, for those of you that like rude songs, I'd recommend checking them out. So it's got that Australian bawdiness that goes along with it.
Oh, nice. So talking about the football hooliganism and seeing like the mass chaos violence, and with that comes this issue about improvised weapons. One of the technical ways I express that is criminal creativity, because where it's a non-permissive environment that you can't carry proper tools to do the thing, people come up with some very interesting tools to do the thing. And with that, there's that violent mentality. Diving into a little bit of darkness here, there's that violent mentality, and the creativity comes along with it, and that definitely informs a martial artist viewpoint when it comes to violence, because talking about rules-based competition, because martial arts is the skilled approach to utilize violence within tactics and techniques and principles, but it's very regimented. And there's a significant difference between martial arts, sport, and then actual violence in combat. And part of it is the intentionality and the rule set. So what I'm curious, what are some of the things that you had seen during those hooligan type days of some of those criminally creative tools that were used there?
Yeah, well, that's why that's why pretty much everywhere you go in England now, you get given a plastic glass. So yeah, you're not allowed to take things out. And even when we go to rock concerts and things like that, you're only allowed a plastic bottle. You're not even allowed to take in glass bottles, because bottles, of course. The majority of weapons that is the improvised things, chip forks. So the Millwall brick, which is a rolled up newspaper, and then if you put a pen in the end of it as well, then you've got like a rather interesting weapon that goes on the edge of that. People will come up with millions of different ways to kill each other. And the Shiv, well, I've got a couple of friends, Sheehan Steve, who's a prison officer, and I've got a couple of friends that we train with. Sensei Chris, who's a policeman. The Shiv proves that people will come up with ways when they're not supposed to make weapons, that they will come up with any way to take another human being out. It's that might be the tool, but it's the mentality that's needed. And you get an awful lot of the big dogs standing there doing the verbal, doing the preemptive parts of the fights, the pre-fight interviews, and making themselves big and making themselves look aggression. But then it's that what finally makes them decide no. And the nasty people don't do any of that. The nasty people, in my experience, just walk up and shiv you. They're just, I had a friend whose back was cut up with a Stanley blade, and he didn't even know he'd been attacked. And the person wasn't after any money, they weren't after anything. They just decided they wanted to cut someone up. And being a Stanley blade, they're incredibly sharp. It's like the tool. The toy that you sent me, a Stanley Blade's one of them in England. So and it just cut him up because it was so sharp he wouldn't feel it at all whatsoever. So, but we have the issue in this country at the moment. I'm sure you've seen with the knife culture, mental illness. I think that when it comes to the actual switch, what makes normal people switch, then yes, there has to be a part of mental illness. And it might not be a mental illness that person has a huge issue with all of their life. It might just be that an awful lot of bad things are going on at the moment, and that's the bit that's in their head. And in 10 minutes time, they're going to be absolutely perfect and back to normal again. But at that moment, at that little thing, there's a switch that did it. And the pack mentality feeds that too, which you see at football games. So that person outside that is completely fine and completely harmless. But as soon as you put in with 200 people that are screaming the same thing, that we'll do it in our cars. We pull up next to each other in the cars and people start screaming and shouting at each other. But as soon as you open that car door, it stops. It's like the two dogs barking at the fence. As soon as the fence goes away, everybody calms down. And actually, I didn't really mean to hurt you. But it's that little switch that makes people jump. And as I say, being English, we tend to think of America that everybody is walking around carrying and shooting each other, and it's constant mass attacks, because that's all we see on the TV is that. And the same way that you probably think all that happens in England at the moment is everybody gets stabbed to death, and there's machetes and there's zombie swords and everybody's running around doing that. And the reality is that it's not that bad, but it's the same as everywhere else on the world. Mental illness, poverty, and some people are just that way inclined that it's going to happen to it. So there's I wouldn't even say we have a problem with teenagers or anything like that, because traditionally that age group, no matter where you are in history, that age group has been the ones to look out for: the mods and rockers, the punks, the bikers, and now it's whatever they call themselves now, yardies and that sort of thing. It's just a different, it's still that age group. It's just our generation, and now looking back at that generation and going, oh, those teenagers are young and scary. And no, they're just going through the same things as we were going through. They've just got a different way of dealing with it. And I partially believe there's a desensitization that's going on with the movies and video games and songs, and just the degradation of society in that sort of way. But I also kind of don't really like that thing. Lieutenant Grossman's books are great, but I don't want it to be that way, if that makes sense. I think there's probably more to it than just the society is going apart, and that's why they're picking up knives. I think that there's a big issue that's been going on in Britain for many, many years, when we got rid of youth centres, places where teenagers could go and do sports for free. So places where teenagers could meet for free. And then when COVID kicked in, people weren't talking to each other. People weren't getting that emotional content. They weren't touching each other. So I have a little fun. I think my stepson's behind me, and we play a little game when we go out to fast food restaurants, is to try and get the teenage waiter or waitress to look at us, because they can't gain eye contact with us anymore, because they haven't learned to get eye contact with us. But partly because of COVID, when they were at that period in their lives, they were chatting up people through their phones, they were texting, they weren't talking to people, they weren't engaging with people. And so, yeah. So, Kenny, all right, Harry, come here, look.
Yeah, come say hi.
That's Harry. Hey, Harry.
What's going
So
on?
he says thank you for the stickers you gave us, by the way. So because I got t-shirts and he got stickers.
Oh yeah, nice shirt, by the way.
Yeah, well, he's got to be done, and I don't need to publicize myself. He can do that for me. So cool.
Nice.
Are you off to bed?
Yeah.
Sweet. You take it easy, man. See you in the morning. No, love you.
Cool.
So yeah.
Oh, go ahead. What it sounds like, and this is just universal, is, for one, investment in our youth, because this is the other hat that I wear and I've worn for many years, as a community youth advocate. And what this sounds like is, institutionally, we have lost this culture of mentorship, whether it's men to boys, or women to daughter, or women to girls. Is that we've lost this institution of mentorship and building this care and guidance process to help move the next generation to survive, to become adults. And now a lot of that, of course, starts with all of that starts with parenting. But as we've seen across the board, it's still a tribal thing. And so with an investment into public safety, by creating and having these organizations, institutions, and facilities and programs to help kids stay out of trouble by keeping them busy, interactive with other people, so they can learn those social skill sets of de-escalation, conversation, attentiveness, present, and being present. What comes with that is obviously isolation and a lack there of awareness and capability. And this is where looking into violence and the scope of violence, because there's the aspect of criminal violence, which is when we talk about mental health and everything else, I mean, criminal violence is its own category. And then we deal with this issue about disproportionate escalatory violent responses, because when we grew up, we could actually still fight in the schoolyard and it would be settled there. And we had an apparatus.
Our schools would say to the other school, there was only 3 schools in the town that I grew up in, and we'd say to the other school, we're going to meet you in the woods on such and such a day at such and such time, and we'll beat you up. And we did.
And it stayed at a certain level, and there was an expectation, and with that, it just, like I said, it's just stayed at that level of violence, and it's very ritualistic. It was ceremonial.
And you kind of got it out of your system, and it was done. And then the next time it was a games thing. And then from going to school, we had the pub culture over here, and the pub that I grew up in, the Carlisle, was very strict at looking after us. So I can get away with saying it now, but I might have been drinking underage. But it would be the case of, well, you can go and have that, but sit over there and be quiet and be respectful. And if you're an idiot, we're going to throw you out and you're not coming back. And we all kind of sneaked in and did that. And then over time, and then we then passed that down to the next generation that came in of doing that. And then in Britain, we don't have the pub culture anymore. Lots of pubs. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 closing a day over in England at the moment. Our pub culture is disappearing. But also because of that, the culture has then changed to a gym culture, which is kind of weird in England to see that you'd think the kids are being healthier because they're going and they're exercising, but they're not doing the communal thing. They're putting their earbuds in and they're exercising. So they're physically working themselves out, but they're not working out their mind, and they're not communing with the people that they're exercising with. And so they're missing that part of it. So we might have been unhealthier physically, but mentally and spiritually, we were much healthier than they were now. Whereas they are much healthier physically, but they've not got that other bit. And they've not got the, you get your parents telling you off at home. But then if you went to the pub, you got told off by the senior guys in the pub. If you were in a motorcycle club, the older guys would tell you off about that. If you were in any sport, then the originators would be telling you off about that. So everywhere you went, you were kept in line by different grown-ups. So, and then the scary part now is that we're the grown-ups. And so, that's bizarre when people come up to me and ask me my advice at martial art events and, Sensei, should we be doing this? And I go, I don't know, go and ask him over there. He knows what he's doing. And then I look down and go, oh, no, actually,
Oh, wait, I got a black belt too.
Yeah. Oh, damn it, you're right. It is me. So, and then, but that's that mentality. They didn't have, and it's not a looking after kids and teaching kids, but in a nice way, not in a, we have an awful lot different ways of teaching now. Through my instructor, I went and learned NLP. So my instructor was a hypnotist as well, and was a master practitioner under Richard Bandler. And then he got me in to go and do, so I did my licensed practitioner. So it's learning how to use different words to engage people and how different people study and different people learn. And, I'm dyslexic. But back when I was a kid, I was just thick and stupid. I wasn't dyslexic. I only got diagnosed as dyslexic about a year ago because my missus realised that all of the workarounds that I come up with are traits of dyslexia. And you go, no, I'm just good at making workarounds. Rather than going A to B, I'll quite often go the wrong way around. But that's how I do things and do. There all these traits we're showing. So we know an awful lot more. And so we're respectful an awful lot more and try all these different ways of doing stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're dicking about, you need to be told you're dicking about. And they get that through martial arts. Because not just because we can hit them, but if you're doing it wrong, we can show you what you're doing wrong and why you're doing it wrong really simply. So if you're doing an angle 1 wrong, it's dead simple to fix. So we have that ability. And I have been an adult instructor for about 24 years. I've only just opened up the kids dojo because I've never taught kids before, because I wouldn't know where to start, because I didn't want to water down what I was doing, because I'm a door kicker. I like the violence aspect of what we do. And it wasn't until he needed to train with more kids, because he's fine practicing with me, but he needed some more kids that I had to learn more about it. And I reached out Dean Franco. And messaged Dean Franco because I know he ran a kids class and he was giving me tips. And then Royce was giving me tips on kids classes as well. Because during COVID, I actually joined in with a couple of Royce's classes over the internet. And so, because I wouldn't have a clue. And the idea of teaching kids knives in this country would be get me in the newspapers pretty much straight away. But I have found you can do sabayon really effectively with a chicken. And
there's a reason why. There's a reason why I do this. People who see it, but there's a reason why I use this as a medium. So, but what this all comes back to is having institutional facilities and programs for mentorship and martial arts academies. And Britain's got a long history of boxing, and I'm going to throw that in that primary category. And we'll circle back to the history of martial arts in Britain, but for this point, martial arts academies are one of the few places where you can have that structured mentorship program with physical and instructional accountability, and it's tribal learning where the experience of the elders come back to teach the next generation They go
Yeah.
through the process of learning it, being tested by it, and it keeps people humble. And with the lack of those kind of institutions, this is where we run into this disconnect about social interaction, physical accountability, social accountability, and we're
Mhm.
stuck and isolated with that. So circling back to it, you've been a professional, you've been an instructor for 25 years and ran a
Yeah.
dojo for how many years? Like 20
Yeah,
plus?
25 at the Hastings Dojo, and yeah, I've been a student for 43 years now. So
Mhm,
yeah, it's yeah. So, but yeah, you're exactly right, and I think also kids get to see that the person that can teach it isn't
mhm.
necessarily the person that can do it. So
Yep.
Mike Tyson would knock me out, but Dan Castaneda could tell him how to knock me out, and
Mhm,
so the kids would understand. Oh, well, that old bald white man actually teaches him how to be the person that he is. So I
mhm.
might trust that man rather than just going straight to that man to do it. But
Yep.
and I think that builds judgment and understanding with the kids as well. I mean, yeah, something I had a conversation with Paolo a couple of years ago, because whenever you hear the word jiu-jitsu, now people go Brazilian and no Japanese jiu-jitsu, and they go, oh, didn't know there was a Japanese jiu-jitsu, and you go, yeah, it's been in Britain since roughly 1900. So
Yeah.
we had the Tenney brothers, and then a couple of other instructors came over really early on. So we've had Japanese jiu-jitsu in Britain longer than some forms of karate have been going, and longer than Aikido's been going. They've been doing that over here, and it was about the time of Jack the Ripper. And so Sherlock Holmes did Bartitsu, and people like Tommy Joe Moore, who I had the pleasure to learn from last year. He came to my course. He's still doing these arts that are from Bartitsu, but we are as well doing the Japanese martial arts. We're still doing it from that. It was that long ago, and there is a bit of refining and a bit of playing, but a coat de geisha is still a coat de geisha. Punch in the face is still a punch in the face. But yeah, so we had because with the history of Britain and martial arts, the suffragettes, they learned Japanese jiu-jitsu. So yeah, Mrs. Pankhurst, Emily Pankhurst, when her and her ladies were getting the votes for women up in Britain, you've seen it on Mary Poppins. So yeah, and she was learning Japanese jiu-jitsu along the road, so that they were. She was harder for them to be arrested. I think that's why the official term was why they started to learn it. So we've got this huge history over here, and we had an awful lot of traditional martial arts still being taught traditionally. So I know of a couple of traditional karate classes that are still taught exactly the same way as they were when I was a kid. And then in the same vein, we've got traditional martial arts being taught in whole new worlds and whole new ways of it being moved around. From the Japanese point of view, that's where I can talk from. From the Filipino point of view, we've got everything over here. We've got huge amounts of instructors and huge amounts of great names. And I was talking to you earlier about a British TV show that we had over here, which I think started an awful lot of the British people learning the Filipino martial arts. It was called The Way of the Warrior, Eskrima, the Filipino way. And when I was talking to you, you were able to find clips of it. And it was yeah, that's it. And we had this on a normal TV night. It was a documentary, and it was an H series documentary about martial arts. And one of the nights was just about Filipino martial arts, and so we were able to see this as kids. And it's wrong, but I'm of that era. I love the fact that people are still walking around having a cigarette whilst they're fighting, and it's proper old school down and dirty martial arts. But this is what we saw. So the people who are grandmasters now over here were inspired by that and went over and learned from it. I've been saying to you, I have an awful lot of broken brains, so I write down an awful lot of things because I've had way too many concussions. Just from my little experience, and I've only been learning Filipino martial arts since about 2005, really. So in 20 years, we've got Balintawak. So of course we've got Richard Cotterill and Martin Silito doing Balintawak over here. There are other instructors, but I haven't trained with them. Okay, so these are only people that have crossed my path. In the rapid harness world, we've got Eric Amada and Pat O'Malley and Nigel Haydrick as well. And I know Pat I'm pretty sure Pat is probably in that video because he had beautiful golden lion's mane hair when he was younger and was an absolute demon. With Dakayana, Marcy Harding and June Dakayana set that up over here. And I didn't realize until researching that my instructor, Henshi Joe Biggs, was one of the people that helped to set that up over here. We've got KI. Rusal Karim, I've trained with over here just briefly. In Pakiti Tertiaire, of course, we got two on Jim. Yeah, I've only had a couple of lessons or two on Jim, but him and his family have been so welcoming. It's been insane. Now they call me Uncle Ozzy, which is great. So I put the little glasses on for his little stunning daughter, and they're the people that gave me this as a present last year, so that I could practice with it. Also with two on Jim, Ishmael Emmar. He used to live over here. I met him at an event, and then he moved to Dubai, but still kept videoing me, and we still kept communing and trying to teach me. And all of these people didn't make really any money out of me. Nobody. They did it for the passion, for the love of it. We got Johnny Cabalis with the PDK. In Dukandu, we got Bob Breen, Rick Young, Willie, of course, Willie Rossini from Petit Tertia. Mark Tucker as well. He's Petit Tertia that I've had to train with. In the lightning world, Guru Tom. So I'm not sure, you must have chatted with Guru Tom over this, but yeah, the man moves better than I ever will. So he's such a beautiful mover. And
because he's a dancer.
Yeah,
it's because he's
and
a dancer.
It really shows. I can't stab the man. You can't get close to the man because he just moves. That's just a toddle. This is nice and easy. He doesn't get there. Yep. And Patrick Chris keeps inviting us to go to Guru Tom sessions and bringing me cakes and stuff like that. It's mind blowing. So Capitarana with GM John Harvey and GM Jude Tucker. John as well is one of the old school over here. And my instructor learned from him many years ago. And when I first started learning Filipino martial arts, John was incredibly nice. And he's the people, if you see me putting the helmet on and getting hit really, really hard, it's his events that I get invited up to. And the fact that he's willing to invite someone that A, isn't a student of his, and B, knows full well that I'm not good. I get to learn so much for free on those days. I get ex-world champions and ex-British champions beating the hell out of me because of my age. So I'm in the senior class, and I couldn't pay for those lessons, which is lucky because I haven't got the money. But I come away with all these bruises and lessons that I've learned, and I'll go to these events and I'm going, right, I just want to get an angle two in. That's all I want to do. I want to do something different. I'm going to do an Amanico or something. And if I can do that, I'm happy with that. We got Krishna Gorano that I learned Sayak from. And he's another old school over here. He was one of the few that was doing FMA in the newspapers and in the magazines before anybody else was. Glenn Lobo, I did Salat with him. Richard as well. Richard, I forgot you. Sorry, Richard Gordon, who's one of GM John's boys. We got Cabalis Serrada Escrime with John Brosner. I was just trying to think of the people that I've had the pleasure to learn with, and none of those people really have made any money out of me. It's just my enthusiasm getting off my butt and going to the classes. And we have a British Council of Calais, Eskrima, and Arnis instructors. We have a British Council of them where they all get together and they all swap and they all share and they all invite me back to go and do these things. And that's what the Japanese community is missing, is what the Filipino community is doing.
Let's put a pause on that, because let's go. Yeah. There is a Filipino martial arts council of a wide variety of systems. Okay. What is interesting, before we jump into the politics of Japanese martial arts, is we consistently see the politics of FMA just battled out online. And I really wonder how bad is it actually in person. I know it is in certain circles, but it is something interesting to say. Across the pond, they can unify. Here in the U.S., it's in small sections, but I think because the issue of the U.S. is so large and we're so disconnected with different subcultures, that has somewhat to play with it. But
you're 6 times bigger than us. I think people don't realize that, for starters, that you're 6 times bigger than us, so it's going to be, everything's going to be magnified 6 times. But they, to my knowledge, I mean, yes, there's always little bits of politics in martial arts, but they teach me how to get on better with other people. And that was the big lesson. That was what my instructor, Henshi Joe, wanted me to take away from martial arts and to bring out, was to bring people together. And that's what he liked to do, was to not so much organize multi-arts courses, but just to go, hey, actually, I think you could do better learning off of that person. Go and play with them and then come back and teach me what you've learned. And those guys give me everything for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 20 quid or whatever it is to go and do one of their training sessions, but they give me all this knowledge for free. All I've got to do is put myself out and go to them, and they don't seem to bicker, they don't seem to argue, they go there with their own style. And
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that in the Filipino world, from my eyes looking into it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I think my style is better than that style, so I'm going to turn up and show them that my style is better than that
Yeah.
style, rather than the Japanese martial arts where they just go, no, my style's better than yours, I'm going to ignore you. They think, no, okay, so you think you're good at this, brilliant, show me, let's play, let's see what we can come up with. And yeah, everybody at these events comes away buzzing and learns so much and builds connections, and then goes away and builds more connections. But I'm always surprised, we briefly were chatting about this before, that out of the Filipino Council and the Filipino martial arts that I've done, the amount of Filipinos that actually do that is about 5%. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. And when I speak to Filipinos that I just meet, because our National Health Service is full of Filipinos, and all of our service industry is full of Filipinos because they're really, really good at working hard. And I say to them, do you do martial arts or anything like that? They haven't even heard of it. They don't even know there's a Filipino martial art. And my brain instantly goes, what? How do you not know this? And I was talking to someone who grew up in the same town as Grand Tuon, Leo Gay. And it's like, you've got Grand Tuon there. How do you not take the opportunity to go along and get beaten up by the man? But then we come back to the historical English or European martial arts society. How many Brits actually do that? And I did. I did foil, saber, and epee when I was a teenager, and I was a fencer,
Mm-hmm.
and then I moved on to broadswords and working with that side of thing. But HEMA really isn't a thing in this country, and I think
Which is
that's
crazy.
possibly,
You would
yeah,
think
it's
it
got to
would
be
be.
pretty unusual. We have a lot of castles, and every bank holiday people all come together to watch medieval displays, and an awful lot of the sword fighters and the horse riders come from Eastern Europe. And they bring their horses and their swords over here to fight in England because of course they want to fight at these great castles that we've got. But it's not our guys doing it. We are very good at fencing. Our Olympic squad's pretty damn good at all of that. But we don't have the historical European Martial Art Council. We don't have them. There is HEMA in London. I'm not going to say there isn't, but it's that they're just not out there. They're just not there. So we have the British Federation of Historical Swordplay. Their name crops up an awful lot more than HEMA if you're looking for it, which I guess being England is because it's more British rather than Europe. But yeah, we if you go to any scout hall or sports centre or any community area in Britain during the week, you will find martial artists there, but you won't find sword fighters there. You won't find people doing, there we go. You won't find people doing that. And it's weird that our culture doesn't do that, the same as the Filipino culture doesn't do Filipino martial arts.
Which is funny. So this is me and Cooper in my backyard over the summer playing more with HEMA than we do with FMA, which is, it's an interesting dichotomy of, I'm a Filipino martial arts instructor with lineage, but I play more with German longswords and rapier work than I do with FMA. It's so odd, but it's interesting though.
But it all crosses over.
Yep,
we've only got 2 arms, 2 legs. The body is only going to be destructible in so many ways and protectable in so many ways. And it's just changing, adapting, and doing that. When we go to in the Japanese world, when you do different gradings, there comes a point where they just throw weapons at you and go, right, here's a tonfa or a sai or a kama or a different size piece of stick. Go and use it. And it's about how can I change, adapt, and overcome with this weapon? How can I, what's the sharp bit? What's the blunt bit? What's it for? Is it for poking? Is it a blunt force trauma? Or is it a stabby? Stabby. Carrot of Doom. So yeah, is it a blunt force trauma or is it for stabbing? And it's using your brain to come up with that. So to a certain degree, any martial artist, because of what we do, should be able to pick up any damn thing. And pretty, it's going to take a bit of effort, but I could make it deadly if I needed to. So. But yeah, you should be able to pick up anything and use it, and that brings us back to the improvised weapons thing again as well. Yeah, if you're walking around, anything's going to be an improvised weapon. We've got the the huge thing at the moment. You say you probably think that Britain's full of knives at the moment, but out of all of the knife crime that's going on, as far as I'm aware, because I look at police reports quite a lot, 70% of it is domestics. And so that means that it's kitchen knives. And it's happening between people who know each other, as Richard Dimitri says. So it's not strangers out on the street suddenly stabbing each other. It's what's going on at home. So we've got an awful lot of build up and back to the mental health issues and domestic issues. And then, what weapons are they actually using? Well, they're using kitchen knives. So we can't ban a potato peeler. It's probably come a time we'll end up with sporks. That's what we used to joke about, is we'll just end up with a sporks. That's all the nation has. So there we go. Yeah, mine's in my bag. Right? Yeah, that's all we're going to end up with in the future. It's those sorts of things, and people will still be killing each other. Yeah, plastic. Yes, I have a plastic package opener that you can take quite happily through an airport, apparently, because it's 100% made of package. But I cut myself just to see, is this thing sharp enough? No, it's totally acrylic. It totally hurts. But we're going to end up in the future with that. But that, in my brain, takes me back to the feudal Japanese days, being a Japanese martial artist, where they said, right, none of you are allowed weapons. We're just going to have these guys walking around with big swords and bows and arrows and that. And so then the peasants created weapons. All of the Japanese martial art weapons were domestic tools, rice dibbers or wheels on a grinding rod. So that they all then change, adapt, and overcome. What can I improvise? What can I use? And if all you've got is a newspaper, that's great. I used to travel a lot on aeroplanes, and I used to love it that they gave me a newspaper or a magazine to sit in front. So it took 2 seconds later, and I've got a Millwall brick there. But they wouldn't let me have a knife and fork to be able to cut my dinner with. Hey, Royce, thank you. You mentioned you earlier, so there we go. Yeah, nunchucks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for rice flours. Yeah, so all of this. So we're gonna find a way to change, adapt, and then come back to the shiv. So it'll happen. So they might ban. We've got the huge thing at the moment with a movie star, Idris Elba, who's famous for the Marvel-y stuff. I don't tend to watch Marvel stuff, apart from the Punisher. He carries swords in the movies, but if they suddenly bring that in because one political party wants to get votes, so they're saying that swords aren't good for you, nobody's getting killed by swords, to my knowledge. So we get like one every 5 or 6 years where someone with mental illness issues goes into a church with a sword and then still doesn't manage to kill someone, which is quite hard. But we're not going to be able to have a movie industry if they ban swords over here. All of our actors aren't going to be able to practice with the swords. All of the Star Wars movies, going back to being a nerd, always. They're not going to be able to practice that because all of our masters at arms and all of the people in our spectacular movie industry aren't going to be able to teach people how to do these things. They're not going to be able to practice. We already got rid of our Olympians when it comes to small bore pistol. And that all of our Olympians back in the day when it came to rifle shooting and pistol shooting used to be in our army and our police. And now they have to go to France in order to practice using the weapons that they're going to use then to represent our country, that they use on a daily basis to protect our country. There's a weird...
It's so weird because what this comes down to, diving a little bit into politics, is this issue about forbidden knowledge, because this is that issue where obscurity and strange chi ball, just like the mysticism of martial arts comes about, is when there is this aspect of forbidden knowledge. And where that comes to is when you have an institution or organizational structure that does not allow people to utilize the tools, let alone go and seek the training, for fear of it being used against them. And this is, again, the dichotomy of criminals are creative. And honestly, when it came to it from the perspective of the Japanese dealing with the Okinawan peasantry, let's face it, the Okinawan peasantry had to be criminal to rise up and defend themselves. So it's this consistent cycle.
And to my knowledge, I mean, I'm not a huge history scholar, but to my knowledge, anybody that's had their weapons taken away from them for a certain period was never then given back to them. It's like, okay, that threat's over now. You can have your guns back or whatever you need. So we don't tend to have guns over here. Farmers have guns for using as a tool, but as we know, weapons are tools. So I have knives, of course. I'm a knife instructor. I pretty much kill Amazon parcels on that. That's pretty much it. That's all they're for. They're package openers. So yes, if need be, but that's not the reason why I've got them, and that's not the reason why I practice with them. It's for the other side of the art. So it's martial and art, military, and also the art part of it. So I'm not particularly good at it, but I can do a Carenza showing the bits and looking spectacular, or I can just put the helmet on and go and hit you with it. So it's Guru Tom, hello. So yeah, it's martial and art, and I think we need both of those bits. And yeah, with the community teaching, when it comes to teaching kids and the next generation, that's what they learn from us. As I was brought up with bows and arrows and sticks and knives, and because I was brought up with them, I was brought up with a healthy respect for weapons, and so I didn't muck about with weapons. And yes, I was a teenager. There were periods where I pushed it, and I learned my lesson because I got cut or I hurt myself with an arrow, something like that. But if you don't learn up with those that could grow up with those things, when the time comes for you to need those things, you're not going to A, know how to use them, and B, not have a healthy respect for them. If you have a healthy respect for a human life, you wouldn't be carrying a blade around with you unless if you're carrying that means I'm going to use it. So that means I'm willing to take that person's life away. Now, if I tell myself that I'm doing it because I want to protect my family and friends and help the police in upholding the law, in this country, I'm going to prison for doing that. So then how can I protect my family and friends and help the police upholding the law if I'm behind bars? So we have to find other ways and different ways to do it and look after our loved ones. And come back to the ego. Just not being there in the first place, going, yep, that person's having a bad day. There is nothing worth me dying over today. So parking space, take it, mate.
And this, going back to this issue about tribal and institutional learning and dealing with mental health, is this problem of improportionate response to a semi-violent or perceived to be violent situation. Because again, back to how we grew up, when we could still fight and was encouraged to a point, but we could settle it out at that level. You have people that are so risk adverse and they don't have that physical engagement and haven't gone through that process of actually the physical accountability for their actions. Because the big issue with freedom of speech is the misunderstanding of freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence. So the rules being is, if you're going to say something or do something that's going to respond in violence to you or others, the self-censorship of that is, well, just don't do it. And but the problem
I can be upset and I cannot like what you're saying, and I cannot agree with what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I'm going to hit you.
And so with
what we run
exactly. So what we run into with this issue about improportionate response with violence is when you have people that are so risk adverse, don't have the breadth of experience of saying, hey, the social skills, aside from the mental health issue, because it's a big part of it, but lacking the social de-escalation and conflict resolution skills, they immediately go from a perceived offense or actual offense and then go shoot somebody. It's like, you have to have that space in between to really see what is actually reasonable in response. But a lot of that comes from institutional learning, mentorship, a culture that supports and understands the need for violence, and putting it in the perspective of a healthy upbringing. Because when you're allowed and have that accountability to go out in the woods with a bow and arrow, swords and whatnot, you learn, and also with the parental guidance and mentorship and that culture, you learn the responsibility of it, because there's an action reaction situation. And this is the problem that we run into with a society that is, one, a fatherless society, a lack of tribe and education. You just run into this issue.
A community to raise a child, doesn't it? And I do think, it's not just mum and dad, it's the whole family has to chip in. And the more opinions you can get, the better. And I was lucky, and I'll do that with a smile on my face, that my father, being who he was in the army, and so I was brought up with a company sergeant major telling me what to do, straight like that. So when I was a teenager and I was at that aggressive stage, I went out and I was with 3 different military groups at one point, the different cadet forces, to learn how to do that. And at the same time, my home life was good, my military stuff was good, but then when I was learning archery with my uncle, I was being treated as a grown-up, and I was being given a dangerous weapon and a knife, and I was surrounded by grown-ups, but I was being treated a lot better. I was being treated like a grown up. And so at weekends, I was being looked after. If I was being silly, I was told not to be silly, but I was being looked out for and looked after. Then I'd go back to the military cadets and I'd be shouted at and treated like I was a child. And then I'd go to school and not the best student in when it comes to mental learning. So I would then be treated like a child. And then the weekends would come around. I'm surrounded by weapons. I'm being treated like an adult. So it is that, the kids, the locker key thing, that the kids step up to where you're going to put them. If as I was being treated like an adult, I was being an adult with the weapons and the dangerous things around me, and then was able to bring that into the rest of my life. So the bows and arrows are interesting because in Britain, for those of you that definitely don't know, especially in the American culture, is hunting is illegal in Britain, and so we shoot foam targets. So we field archers are simulated hunters. So we walk around the woods dressed as trees, shooting at animal targets in realistic hunting positions. And target archery is the ones with the pretty Olympic faces that we shoot at, where we tend to be indoors, but we shoot them at specific marked distances. But we don't hunt in this country. We're not allowed to hunt in this country with a bow and arrow. And the majority of people I've met in this country wouldn't. So they're not those sorts of people. They like to do the art side of it, but not the martial side of it. And with that go, there's me. That's today, and I'm quite impressed. I'm chuffed. I got both of these two deal with this one. But this is field archery. This is British field archery. So we're at a wood at unmarked distances, and there are 2 foam rubber deer up there, and then a big safety net to stop my arrows disappearing off into the woods. And so we practice hunting, but we don't hunt in this country. And the same, most of us wouldn't, even if we were allowed to, because we don't need to do that. But because of this, we do talk an awful lot about where our food comes from, and the kill it, clean it, cook it way of doing it. And so there are lots of conversations that people have about what do they, I don't eat red meat, but that's because I don't like the taste of it. But people talk, well, I only eat this because I'd kill this, and I'd only do that because I can do that. It's an interesting culture over here with that we are the martial and the art. There's that bit. But yeah, going back to being treated like an adult meant I grew up like an adult and I had a healthy respect for weapons. That moved into the martial arts, so that I then had a healthy respect for knives. I then understood what a machete could do. When it came to pole weapons, what can blunt force trauma actually do? And my instructor, Hanshi Biggs, was a paramedic. So he used to take me to the hospital sometimes, and I spent a couple of Saturday nights in the hospital seeing what knife attacks can do, and more importantly, smelling to me. So I've seen the people brought in, but that smell is something that will always stick with me. And I think that would be a huge part of if you've got any parents out there that are worried that the kids are going down that route and into the gang cultures and stuff like that, is take them up the hospital on a Saturday night and ask the receptionist if you can sit at the back and just see what the other side of having that ego actually looks like when people come in and they've been stabbed because they looked at someone's girlfriend the wrong way, or they stole a parking space or something like that. So yeah, it'd be to see the reality of the aftermath.
And again, it goes back to tribal learning and mentorship and parenting. And so when you have children that are left unsupervised, and here's the other one too, because when I was in the Army, I was a non-commissioned officer for my last 4 years. The thing that I came to realize is when you treat your soldiers, your subordinates, as children, I mean, they're going to respond as children. So if you want this expectation, so this expectation of, if they want to have the respect of being a man, being an adult, treat them like one, give them the opportunity to rise to that occasion. And also part of that is clearly communicating, here's the expectations, here's the accountability, and here's the responsibility of that. But typically people want to rise to the occasion if you give them the respect to do that. And martial arts is a great medium for that. So
it is the best. It's, and as we said kind of like at the beginning, if you do it right, you never need to use it. We spend our entire life learning how to do these things, and then we don't need to use them. It's not that we wouldn't use them. We don't need to use them. We're nice people. We don't put ourselves in silly situations. I don't go and use the cash point at 2 o'clock in the morning in an area that I don't know. We're smart. We use our brains to get around this. We don't need the pre-fight interview. We learn it all, and it's good fun, but we don't need the pre-fight interview.
And again, this goes back to been there, done that. And this is because the argument comes into a lot of martial arts is about pressure testing and
Mhm.
sparring and fighting, which those are clearly the means of which we can test the skill within a controlled environment, of course, with rules. But when we're talking
Yeah.
about the chaos of combat, the application of violence, obviously a normal person can't go out and test their violent skill sets in a wide variety because that's not normal. So
Yeah.
having the other side of it, that the realistic expectation and reality of going and seeing here's the outcome of it, here's the
Yeah.
process of what occurs with it, and building that healthy respect is a form of pressure testing that I find that a lot of the theoreticists don't have, because they have this idea of
Mhm.
like, well, cut an angle one, angle two,
Yeah.
here's the technique that we're playing, but without the actual understanding of not just the physical pressure testing against a resisting opponent, but the intellectual process of
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, let's
Uh,
go cut a piece of meat. Let's
yeah.
go see the accountability of the response of this is a blade against meat, and better yet, the smell of it,
The
and on
smell
top
is the
of it,
one that I remember. Yeah, so that's why
yep,
that'll always stick with me. I can see it, it dates with the NLP training. I can picture the scene. I
mm-hmm,
remember what it looked like, but it's the smell that sticks with me of what that was. And but that was part of him
mm-hmm,
teaching me in the way that he taught me, and because I'm a visceral person, I needed to get that hands on and that sort of thing. It's easy for me to look at a book and learn all the veins and the arteries and what
mm-hmm,
cuts this and does that, but if I can see it, that's different. And then the aftermath of it, what actually happened to that person that was cut,
yep,
how did they ever regain the use of that limb, what did it do to that limb, and then what did it do to the rest of their life and to the person that did its life.
yep,
So because you might have won the battle, but you ain't winning the war.
no,
I don't know much about the litigation side of things because that doesn't tend to happen over here. But
right,
if you end up, you can get not only the police getting you in trouble, but also then the family of the offender getting you in trouble, and the amount of monies that all these things are going to cost. So
yep,
you might have a silly altercation that could have been done by buying the person a pint. That's then going to
mm-hmm,
take 20 years of your normal life to sort out, but then you'll never get it out of there what you did,
mm-hmm,
and or if it happened to me, then what I've got to go through with the physiotherapies and stuff. So,
yep,
as martial artists, we've all had operations because of our martial arts. So
yeah.
we've all learned what bits feel like when they're cut open and they shouldn't be cut open. So
We voided the warranty because of our extracurricular activities. Yes.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, where I was self-employed for many years, and we used to get people come around to the workshop and try and sell us all health insurance and things like that. And so they just used to bypass everybody. Yes, I do make them investigate the consequence of their actions. But that's part of the other things that my students are grown-ups majority of the time. I've
yep,
only just started this kids class, so I can tell them things, and the ones that want to will go away and look at it. The ones that will
mm-hmm,
go away and understand that bit. The ones that don't, that just want to do the arty bit, that's fine. But there's I lost my train of thought, Gary. Well done. You did it to me like you did it in the dojo. That's a what if for me.
well, I mean, it's that individual accountability of process of learning and what is the outcome. Going back to what is the why we fight, and
Yeah.
part of that philosophy is that the why changes throughout time. It changes based upon
Mm.
where we're at emotionally, mentally, intellectually, spiritually, whatever. But the why is puts us on track as to what are we doing. And the thing that I've
Yeah.
come to at my point in my life is why we fight is because I do it out of love. I do it for the perspective of I love the martial arts, whatever it is. I love what this does for me, what it has done for me, and I also do it
Yeah.
for the love of those immediately around me, such as my wife and my children.
Yeah.
So, and
No,
so
that's
with
totally. I said about my daft books.
mhm,
I wrote down last week. Are we an asset or a liability? Because this
yep,
changes about every 10 seconds. So
yep,
but you do it for the people you love. But am I helping the people that I love when it comes to that thing? And then am I going to help them later on? And
mhm.
what's going to happen with our lives?
So with that topic, why to use fight, but why martial arts? Why do you still do it, and why do you continue to teach it, and what does it bring for you in your personal life that continues that fire for you?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these sorts of questions crop up every so often, and
Hmm.
the easy answer is because we know no other way.
Yeah.
Um, I've been doing this so long, it is part of my personality. And
Yep.
in the Japanese world, by the time you get to your black belt, it should be I've
10, 15 years.
yeah, I've had, God, I've had relationships last the length of a song, but this is the longest thing that I've done in my life is martial arts in one form or another, whether it's Japanese, Filipino, bows and
Mm-hmm.
arrows, swords of different description. And why am I? Well, I'm not a warrior. I wasn't a soldier. I didn't want to go down that route because
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up with them. That wasn't my thing. But the interest in looking about the inner me and the mind, body, and spirit side of me always appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find out who I am always, but I am not a scholar, so I'm not going to find out who I am by just using my brain. I need to sweat. I need to put on the mask and a stick every so often, and I can sit down and use nice big words and talk about myelination and stuff like that. But every so often, I need to sweat and get bruised, just so that I can then find out me that other way. So yeah, why do I do it? Because I know no other way now. It's just become part of my nature, and like anybody with a passion, I want to give that passion to everybody else. So I love people with passions. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's stamp collecting or whatever. If you go up to someone that absolutely adores something and says, what is it you do? Teach me. They will teach you, and they
Yeah.
will give you all these things. And that's where the Filipino community came together for me, is that during COVID, I was stuck at home. And I wasn't able to go out, and I was reaching out to all these different instructors going, I've just did this on my own. What's it like? And they were coming back to me, Royce, if you're still around, Royce, but yeah, you were one of the ones. They were coming back to me and they were giving me that thing. So I'm always willing to put myself out there to learn new things, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
one of my positive traits. But I am also not good. I'm not naturally gifted. I have to work at everything. And that's why I kind of keep doing it, is because I'm not gifted at it. I've met some amazing martial artists in my time that could throw amazing punches and kicks and knew exactly what they were doing. And they no longer do it because it was too
Mm-hmm.
easy for them. They didn't have to put themselves into what they were learning to get better.
Yeah. Because learning a new thing is healthy. Learning a new thing, and this is a conversation I've had with a couple of neuroscientists and neurophysicians like Sifu Viet Lee from one of my previous episodes, is that
Mm-hmm.
this thing about learning new things is healthy for your brain because it's that issue of movement is life and it's medicine.
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
need to have that consistent sensory input and challenge because that helps us grow. And
Yeah.
it's not just a physical aspect. I mean, learning a new language, learning how to cook, learning new skills is just healthy and it keeps us
Yeah.
moving forward. And
As soon as you stop, you die. I was talking to a friend today who's not having a particularly good time of it at the moment, who
Mhm,
I've known since I was a child, who's been one of my archery coaches forever.
mhm,
And I was saying, how are you doing? And he said, well, it took me 6 goes to walk from there to there today because I'm not doing particularly well.
yeah,
But you did it. You didn't give up. As soon as you stop, that's when you're in trouble. Whether I stop physically or stop mentally or stop reaching out to the world, that's when I'm in trouble. If I'm only my own little bubble and I ain't moving anywhere and I'm not doing anything and I'm not learning anything, that's when we die. And that comes back to the mental health as well. If
mhm,
we're not trying to make ourselves not better, but just more interested.
mhm.
I'm never going to be a better version of me. This is as good as it's going to get, but I'm going to learn more interesting things before I shuffle off this mortal coil, hopefully.
Good is so like intrinsic to the individual because we have this outside
Mm-hmm.
perspective of what good is, and this is where I often find that the trolling issue is with social media, as the
Right.
perspective and lens of somebody looking at it saying that's not good based upon my preferences and expectation, etc.
Yeah.
But good is relative to the individual because is it good enough for them to find that fulfillment? Is it
Yeah.
good because it's technical? Is it good because it's efficient and effective? It's like boils down to what is the why. Because if you're
Yeah.
doing this for the health, the art, the love, then good is good enough. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. What are you getting out of it? So I
yeah,
put a lot of my life down to the fact that I'm an only child.
yeah,
And I love the fact that being an only child, if I wanted to do anything, I had to go and say to people, hello, my name is Clive, teach me
yeah,
what you know. And
yep,
that made me sociable. Whereas I've got a lot of family and they've got brothers and sisters and they commune in their world perfectly. But then when it comes
hmm,
to communing with the outside world, they're not as confident as I am. And so God, I was a sub aqua diver, I was a parachutist, I've done all of the martial arts and all of the things. Just because if I didn't, I'd sit in my own room going crazy and not doing stuff. And that's where COVID was. The opportunity was, do you sit at home and do nothing and rot until this thing passes, or do you take this as an opportunity to learn new things and do new stuff and try this? God, we wouldn't have met if it wasn't, or we haven't met, but we wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for COVID. Nobody would have started doing these podcasts and Zoomcasts and all of these things if it wasn't for the fact that they said, right, you've got to stay there, and we can't stay there. We still need to keep growing and learning and reaching out. We can't just sit still and do nothing. And
you can only stay. You can only stay in the victim mentality for so long, because, like, to borrow a phrase from Frank Herbert's Dune, stagnation is death and leads to total obliteration. So again, movement is life and it's medicine. So we got to keep moving forward. And I'm glad that the community at large continued to grow together during COVID. Because, I mean, as terrible as the pandemic was for a lot of people throughout the world, it also did some really great things for things across the world, such as for the FMA communities, building this incredibly powerful social network and global community where we can exchange thoughts and ideas and have these dialogues. So pulling the silver lining out of it, it's important and it's powerful. And it comes to like a bigger part of like documenting the history of FMA, that because of the pandemic, we were able to document so much of the thought process.
And what would have been Mark's books. So where I would have just been stuck with Mark Wiley's books, trying to learn everything. Suddenly I had Dean Franco interviewing all these people and telling me names of instructors I didn't have a clue of. And that was brilliant. That opened the world up. So we were forced to be closed off, but we refused that. We uprose against what they were trying to oppress us with, and we went out and we did even more than what we were supposed to have been doing.
Yeah. And from my own side, though, which is interesting, because I came back to the community after the pandemic had lifted, because I had shut down the gym in 2019, had my suicide attempt, and I really shut myself off from the world to heal, get through that victim mindset, and just go through that process. And it's been up to this point where I've come out in small spaces and different levels to be able to reach out to the community. So what's interesting for me coming after the fact is I'm starting all over, because I got rid of all my social media from before that time. And I was literally isolated, self-isolation away from the community. So I missed out on all of the great stuff that occurred during the pandemic within our FMA online community. Although looking at it, I would have not been able to be as who I am now and trying to be during that phase, because I was still stuck in that victim mentality, still stuck in that woe is me.
I get it, but I think that's all part of being a warrior as well, though. We need time on the mountaintop sitting and contemplating as much as we need time downstairs sweating and beating each other up. So we need to, and we realize these things, and we realize the fatalities of it and the totalities of it, because we're thinkers. It sounds daft that we spend our time trying to knock each other out, but we think more than anything. It's like atheists. As an atheist, atheists know more about religion than religious people, and it's kind of like that. We do the same as being warriors. So it's part of the warrior culture to lock yourself away every so often, and hide for a little bit and concentrate on yourself. I messaged my Pikiti guys and said to them, look, sorry, I wasn't being much of a student to you last year, because I was concentrating on looking after my students. And so this year I've given the dojo to Sensei Tony, who's on here, and said, right, you look after the dojo. I'm going to pop in and out and come and train, but I want you to do this so that I can then do a bit for me now. We've got a good group of guys and girls that come up and play regularly and are like-minded individuals, because that's the other awkward thing with martial arts, is finding like-minded individuals. So I don't know the figures for the FMA community, but usually we tend to say it takes about 2,000 students to make a black belt. And then for every Dan grade after that, you're losing at least 2,000 to 5,000 students between. So the fact that I'm fifth Dan means that there's about 20,000 students that have stopped doing it in the time it's taken me to get here.
You're in that 1% of the 1%.
Yeah, and finding those like-minded souls. But we still stay friends with people that no longer train with us.
Mhm.
So I've got a good community of friends that I've trained with over the years. And we joke it's because they put us in life-threatening situations. You know, the people that have tried to choke me out and the people that have stabbed me, and you know, the people that have woken me up when I've been unconscious are the people that I trust most in the world because they've saved my life, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we still, even though they no longer train, they are still are part of our lives. We don't shun them and go, no, I'm no
Mhm.
longer speaking to you because you're not going to turn up on a Tuesday night and train. So they are still part of our lives. We've given as instructors part of us to them, and they've taken that
Which
away.
naturally leads into one of the most common but also one of the most important topics that I bring up in this podcast is, again, this is kind of a coach's coaching coaches about life to a point, is this issue about you share yourself with other people, you get involved with them, you get to learn their truths, you get to learn the weight of that consequence of knowing people and their truths. So it runs to this issue about vicarious traumatization and compassion fatigue. Those are highly
Yeah,
technical terms,
yeah,
but it's that issue of like the weight of knowledge and being affected by it, and the burnout
mm,
process of it. So in my
yeah,
case, because of my incapability of dealing with those things, clearly I got burnt out, led to the suicide attempt, and it's
yeah,
taken me that time to come back. My
yeah.
question for you and anybody who comes on this podcast is, what has been your experience, if any, with dealing with vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue? And on top of all that, what has been your process to move beyond that? And so with that.
Yeah. But the biggest one for me. Um, I'm reading Royce, but you're using big words, and I've got a small brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. This is how we grow and stay healthy as individuals and as a community and as martial artists. Yeah, totally. In your area, you know, I'd love to see your dojo. I've seen so many videos of inside your dojo, and I want
Yeah,
to see the
same.
shopping centre and the rest of the outside world that's around it. So one day we'll get there. That's the other thing. Very briefly before I go on to the really cool stuff, we were
Mhm.
talking about how people have helped me out. And how people from the FMA community have been giving. I have a huge amount of clothing over there from Royce and
Mhm.
Jack and yourself, and Two on Jim, and I people because I've reached out to them and said, "Hey, now, Iron Tree, Dave, Iron Tree, Kelly, and Jeff Berger." And if I say if you've got any t-shirts, you need a little bit of money to help out and keep your dojo running, give me a shout and I'll buy a t-shirt off of you. I got a huge amount of clothing in there from people that I'll
Yeah.
probably never meet, but they've all been kind enough to go out of their way, make no money really out of me, because by the time it takes the postage and going to the post office and stuff, there's not, but they're going to retire out of sending me a t-shirt. So that's
Yeah.
a huge thingy. So I'm definitely doing something this year so that I can send everybody that sent me stuff thank you presents, because it's been immense. And that started during COVID, was sending people
Yeah.
presents and trying to do that. So how do the vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue, very big posh words. I was very lucky. My instructor, I keep a picture of him here, Hanshy Biggs. So he passed, and unfortunately he passed 4 years ago, and that knocked me for six. But prior to that, as he was a martial arts instructor and a paramedic, he had several nervous breakdowns
Mhm.
and he was not living a good life. And it was going up and going down over the 20 odd years that I was his student.
Mhm.
I was only a Zuki for about 5 years out of that period. But I had distance.
Mhm.
So I was about 3 hours away from his house. So I'd go up and see him train, spend the weekend, constantly done it. But then I'd get to escape, come back to my normal life, and then go back up and do it again every weekend or once a month and that sort of thing. So I had distance. I was
Mhm.
able to distance myself away from him. Some of his other rookies and some of his other students didn't have that distance. So when he went down, they went down with him.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been him purposely trying to drag them down, but
Yeah.
just if you're around those people, it's going to happen. Just
Yep.
vicarious liability, is it something like that? They're going
Bikers.
to, you're going to pull those people down just because you're going through that. But because I was able to escape, it was spectacular to me because I only saw the good sides. I'd go up, we'd do the thing. And even when he was down, I would only get him being down for a couple of 3 days, not for, I know there was an end in sight. So I could put up with the horrible thing until it happened. So when he passed, I suddenly wasn't able to do that. It happened during COVID, and we were communing every day during COVID, which hadn't happened for quite a while because I was a grown up and he was a grown up. So we were still chatting, but it wasn't constantly. Usually what would happen is he would go to watch the football in the pub, and then Sensei Rob would go off to get a beer. And then whilst Rob was away getting a beer, he was bored, he'd text me and go, Clive, what are you up to? And so we had this communication going on. But then during COVID, because everybody was locked away, he was communicating with me constantly. Every night I was getting conversations with him, and if he wasn't video calling me, we were chatting. And so it really built up that. And when he was down for quite a while. And then he started to build his life back up. And over the last couple of years of his life, he came back to being the instructor that he was before. He was mentally and physically capable of doing wonderful and amazingly weird things. And that's what hurt. Because all of a sudden, this person that I knew really well had got bad and then come back. And then at the height of everything had passed. And so it sent me a little bit, not off the rails, because there wasn't any rails to go to. I couldn't have gone to the pub. I couldn't have gone out and beaten up people. But my family and friends really rallied around me, and especially my students. They did an awful lot to try and help me because they knew of this lifelong mentor father figure that I'd had for so many years. I was suggested by work that I got some therapy. And they had 3 therapy at work. They said, we'll set up a lady and she'll come and talk to you. And it was mind-blowingly amazing. Because as a warrior, we don't do that stuff. We don't talk about our emotions and feelings because I don't have them, so I don't have to talk about them. There we go, job's done. I just hit people with sticks and they can cuss me. So this lady then spoke to me about my life, and pretty much she was quite clever. She didn't make me go down the hippy drippy path of my emotions and stuff like that, but she then set me up for the rest of my life. And it only had about 7 sessions with her. So it was probably only about a day in total that I spent with this lady. And she'd give me projects to do. And being a martial artist, she'd say, right, I want you to do a list of 10 of these things. I'd go away and do them. I need you to get fitter. Okay, I'll start doing sit-ups. That's what we do. And so she gave me projects to do in between each of our sessions. And I did the projects and came back. And then we were able to talk about that. And that got me not only sorted for me, and understanding what had gone on, and that there was no accountability for why he died. We couldn't blame anybody. It wasn't a car crash or anything like that. It was a heart attack. And there was nothing that really could have been done about it. But she got me set up for how I dealt with him, but then how I dealt with life, and saw all the patterns that had happened in my life were just repeating patterns like we do. And so she helped me work on myself so that I was then able to have a relationship. And the next relationship I had was the lady that I ended up marrying, because I was in the right place in my right mind to be able to be the better me, to be able to go forward and then give that better person to someone else. And all of the problems I had in previous relationships was that constant cycle that we'd found is exactly the same as in training. Sometimes you struggle so hard to try and get that technique, and then you don't get that technique, and then you either go off and do something else, or you go, oh no, that's terrible, that technique obviously doesn't work because I can't do it. She then taught me, no, it's you, and try and do this instead and think about different ways of doing life. And then she made me a much better person that understood myself better, so I was then able to go out and fall in love and give myself to someone else and get married and have a stepson, and life's all cozy now. It's quite nice. It's a bit weird, not used to it, but it's good fun.
It's beautiful is what it is, my friend. It's beautiful. Because
it's a journey.
Yeah, it really is. What's interesting, talk about warriors who don't talk about their emotions. That's a misnomer that I'm finding as I've done my own research and education. And quite honestly, the global war on terror the past 20 years has really changed the community viewpoint, plus with the data, plus with the driving force, but with our veterans all over the world, not just the Americans, our British veterans, our Canadian veterans, our veterans across the globe. They're driving this force about mental health, because we've had such consistency of violence and warfare and the cost of it thereafter, the broken boys, that there has been this generational trauma issue. But again, with 20 years in cultural shift, it's okay to talk about our emotions. So okay to talk about our
Yeah.
feelings, and also put the work.
Yeah.
Because the reality that we have come to in reframing this is we go to a physical fitness instructor to make us stronger. We go to a
Yeah.
doctor when we're sick. We go to a mechanic to fix our vehicle. So why not go to somebody who is a behavioral health specialist to help us with our behavioral health issues?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if we're
That's
going,
it. Yeah.
so accepting that and going through that process to make us better, I think we are in a space in our society now that we can get accept that, and it's generally accepted as a society, and we actually have the means to do so. Because in the past, in history, the emotional warrior, we specifically, I'm going to use it with the samurai tradition. You had
Yeah.
these beautiful poets and artists, and that was their process uh, of decompression through violence and
Yeah.
keeping it uniformed. In the Native American traditions, we also
Yeah.
have this process of coming back through the labyrinth and the tribe healing the warriors as they came back. And they give them the opportunity to say their piece, dance out their situation, and grow that accountability and gratitude
Yeah.
bond between them and the tribe. And for some reason, for quite a long time in the West, there wasn't that connection because there
Yeah.
wasn't, because we just pushed them away. But now
Yeah.
there's a greater acceptance, and it's beautiful to find out the process of which people figure out how to make it work for them and
Yeah.
establish those boundaries and affect those. Because what is beautiful, and my friendship with you and many other people is that who are attached to you, is your overall excitement is infectious,
Thank
and
you.
that
Thank you.
positivity
Mm.
speaks out. And this is where, again, an uplifting community comes from people who are uplifting. And that is one of the things that I really appreciate you. Because like going back to like how we originally met before I shut
Yeah.
everything down in 2019, we met
Yeah.
online through another podcast, and we've
Yeah.
continued that forward. So, and we've
Yeah.
gone
And
through our cycles with that. So
mhm. No, that's it. It's been a journey in that, and even to get here. And this year, this is the first time we've actually sat down and had a proper chat. But
yeah,
we've
yeah.
had enough texty chats to know that the other one is an idiot, for want of a better way of putting it, a very British way of putting it. So yeah, but yeah, I've got quite a few friends that were in the forces, and yeah, some that
Mhm.
got PTSD and that. And the way that we deal with things and communicate now has changed hugely drastically, especially in the forces. You know, our
Mhm.
grandparents, for instance, they used alcohol to solve it. That was it. Drink it didn't happen. Drink it under the table. Whereas now, my friends, I can sit down openly and we can chat about how they're feeling, which feels uncomfortable, feels weird. I wasn't brought up in a family that did the huggy kissy thing, but it's something we need to do in order to progress it and make everybody better. And isn't that the plan of us all, to keep moving forward and make everybody better, everybody around us better. Then we won't need to do the martial arts, put
And
ourselves
again,
out of business.
it goes back to the thing of why we fight. We fight out of love, and
Yeah,
we do this out of love. And so why not do the things necessary to continue doing the things that we love with the people that we love? And part of that process is we got to get ourselves physically fit and emotionally fit. So we got to
yeah,
do the work. And
yeah.
that's how we get better as a community. So being one of those people who helps drive that community positivity, um, my hat's off to you, my friend. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, it's not for everybody. I think
yeah,
that's the other thing as well. That we're not we're not the same as other people. So some
yeah.
people are incredibly enthusiastic about stamp collecting. Some people are incredibly enthusiastic about this. But yeah, we're just one thing, and we need to meet other people as well. We need to go out and commune and chat with other martial artists and bring everybody together, and then
Mhm.
then it gets better. You know, last year I did my first ever multi arts course that I'd never organised a
Yeah.
thing before, but I figured I'd better do this now. It's the perfect opportunity. I can use the excuse of the 25th year of my 50th birthday to get
Mhm.
everybody together. I've got it down here. And I got all of these nice logo people to come and play. And they were being incredibly nice and putting themselves out for me at the
Mhm.
same time as I couldn't have thanked them anymore. And some of them brought me presents and things for inviting
Yeah.
them to come up. And it's like, no, you're coming to teach. And one of the interesting things that got on there, it was supposed to have been one day of Japanese art, so the Filipinos could try Japanese art, one day
Mhm.
of Filipino art, so the Japanese could try that. It ended up going to pot. And a couple of Filipinos joined in with the Japanese, and a couple of Japanese, and but everybody got on. And I had a chat with the instructors beforehand because as plans change as they do, and they all just said, "No, actually, we'll do this and we'll do that," and everybody got on. And then the best thing for me since is some of the instructors have met up since and
Yeah.
swapped over. And so they've grown that community, and that's what my instructor wanted to do, and kind of enforced on me when we did all these multi-arts courses together, was bringing people together to any art just to get them together and play. And then now I've been able to do it, so we just got to keep these things going now, though.
Yeah. So with that, because we talk about disunity often in podcasts like this, whether it's HEMA, FMA, Japanese martial arts, underwater basket weaving, whatever. Um, if you could be master commander of the universe within the FMA community, what would you do to bring the community together? Because it always sounds like you have an idea.
Well, to bring the community together, we could just got to drop egos. So the empathy.
Mhm.
Oh, cool, Guru Tom. I love Guru Tom. But yeah, no, we see things from other people's eyes. So as soon as you see and you empathize with what the other people are doing, then you no need to do anything there. So see that there's a wonderful group of guys that I know nothing about, that they let me come up and play with them, and Guru Tom completely hurt my head. But he does. But yeah. But yeah, no, empathize. See things from other people's point of views. So I know that I'll walk a mile in a man's shoes and all of that, but yeah, just put yourself out there. Go and put yourself out, and then other people will put themselves out, and then we'll just get better together. We will all grow
Mhm.
as a much better community, and we will grow as a race. You know, we've got to stop trying to do things that divide us. So
Yep.
going, oh, I'm this politician, or I'm this politician, or I'm this martial art, or I'm Coke or Pepsi. We've got to stop dividing ourselves. They try and divide us enough as it is. We've just got to come together as a community and go, nah, we're all right. So we can sort it
Absolutely.
out.
Absolutely. So, which kind of comes up to a conversation that I had with Guru Chris the other day. But with that, FMA is the duct tape of the martial arts world. What are your thoughts on it? Because the fact is, unifying things. Well, duct tape has a
Mm.
great opportunity to unify stuff temporarily, but to build those stronger bonds. How do we do that? But first, do you believe that duct tape or FMA is the duct tape of the martial arts world, or can it be?
It's a great way of putting it. And yeah, I watched that interview. It was good. I enjoyed that one. But I like the analogy that it is the duct tape with martial arts. And I think it is because of the enthusiasm of the instructors and the willingness to put themselves out and get on with each other, which
Mhm.
takes us back to that first bit. But that's what I see. And that's why if you give them the opportunity to turn up to your event, whatever it is, they will be there and they might not be hundreds of students, but they will be there and will give you their knowledge for free. And so that's how we then come together. We just start sharing it. I know it's people don't like learning new things because it's uncomfortable. Even
Mhm.
in our own world, people don't like learning new things because it's uncomfortable. But that's the only way. That's how we all start off. That's that uncomfortable feeling. I've got to get used to feeling uncomfortable if I want to be a martial artist for my entire life. And yeah, put yourself out there. So go and be
Mhm.
friends with everybody. Everybody's got something to teach you, even if it's some weird little fella that you wouldn't normally talk to. Guarantee they've got something that the teacher that you didn't know before. So I did as a famous wrist lock called Kodagage, as we call it, and
Mhm.
I'd been doing that for about 20 odd years. And then
Yeah.
someone said to me, if you just do that, it totally changes it. Brilliant. Why had
Mhm.
I not seen that? Through myself, I couldn't find that. But by someone else helping me, I found the answer to something different that I never would have seen just by me looking. I need other people.
And it costs you nothing to sit there and take a moment and intake that information, let alone it costs you nothing to share that. And most of all, it costs you nothing to be compassionate enough to say,
Yeah.
ha, I'm going to be friendly and excited and just accepting that you are going to spend time and not and share that knowledge with me. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. them pictures that you brought up of Guru Tom is a perfect example of it. So I'll travel up, me and my student Tony will go up and see him, and we'll spend an afternoon with him. Usually within about the first 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, I'm full up. And I could quite happily just go away and just practice that. And then in a Japanese school, that's kind of what you would do. But we will then go on for about another 3-4 hours of him just giving all this stuff out to us. And he's just like, right, I've got to take as much on as possible. I've got to write it down. I've got to video this and go away and practice it, so that he wants to then give me more stuff in the future. So he's imparted this knowledge to me. If I just go, no, right, I don't want to play, then he's not going to want to do that again. But if he goes, oh, actually, Clive might not have got that bit right, but he got that bit spot on, and I can see that he went away and practiced that bit, then he's then going to want to impart more knowledge in me, which is only going to make me better. So we're going to help each other big time grow, but we've got to do it. You've got to go there first. In the hypnotism world, if I want you to be happy, I have to be happy. There's no point in me going, I want you to be really excited about this. I want you to be really excited. Then you're going to be excited. So, yeah, I've got to put myself out in order for them to put themselves out.
And it circles back to this whole thing about this podcast and interacting with people online, is that I want to interact with people who are generally excited and has something positive to bring to the community, even if there's a disagreement, but they are conscious, aware, and emotionally and intellectually mature, whatever, that they are willing to come and say their piece respectively, go through that process of disagreement or agreement or agree to disagree, but they're respectful in a matter, because it costs nothing to not be an asshole. So and
you had a great one with Tu and Rob and Paolo, and that is a perfect conversation. We don't have to agree on the same thing, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about it, and we might end up walking away learning something from it.
So and again, this is where the things I've always appreciated about you is your enthusiasm and just general love and support of this community. So again, my friend, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I think actually this is a good place to stop, because we've been at this technically for 2.5 hours. So yeah, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to put out there for me to share with the community?
No, all's good. I appreciate it. And if anybody wants to ever watch anything of the videos and stuff like that, and then message me about what the hell was it you were doing, or even if you watch it and you go, you're doing that wrong, great, tell me. That's the only way I'm going to get better. And as you guys, as Filipino martial arts, you know an awful lot more about that particular bit than I do. So yeah, please pick holes in me, and because that's the only way I'm going to learn, is if you help me out. So I appreciate that, thank you. But there's me, Hastings Dojo. So but no, you keep doing what you're doing, sir, and you keep promoting people. And the chicken works. If it's fun, people are going to want to do it. If it's too murder, death, destroy, then people are not going to want to do, and they're not going to grow. They're just going to be the same ignorant people that they were. At the end of this conversation, I've learned a lot more about you than I knew at the beginning of this conversation, and that's pretty much all I want in life.
Yeah. Again, the guilty, not the guilty pleasure, but the really selfish thing what this podcast allows me to do is I get to have great conversations with interesting and cool people. And
cool.
If I happen to share it, with people, that's fine. But selfishly, this is me having a great conversation with a friend, and this is why I love doing it. So
if you were closer, we'd go out and drink Coca-Cola together, because we're far too old, and it's going to be a Sunday night here. It's lunchtime for you, isn't it? It's 10 o'clock here now. So
yeah, it's about that. So again, my friend, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do. And keep being clucking mad, because it works. So if you're smiling, you're doing something right, in my opinion. So we'll keep it up.
Agreed. Well, I'm going to drop you down, hang out in the lobby for a sec, and I'll just close this out.
Sir.
Yep. Well, everybody, that was a great podcast. Clive, like I said, is one of my favorite human beings. In the space of the FMA world, or just in general, even though I've never met him. This is the longest conversation I've ever had with him, but he is by far one of my favorite people that I interact with consistently. So be sure to check out all of his social media. He's got some great stuff out there, and more importantly, just get to know the guy. He's just so pleasant, and this is definitely one of my favorite podcasts. I hate to say I have favorites, but this has definitely been one of my favorites. So bit of business coming up. I have another podcast coming up on Tuesday with the two FMA nerds talking about stuff. Look for the flyer. I have a tendency not to promote out on the podcast, but the fact is, look out for the flyer. I got something cool coming up, so he knows what's going on. But yeah, look for that flyer. I'm also uploading the 2FMA Nerds podcast on Spotify, so find it, look for it, subscribe to it, please. Thank you. And yeah, everybody have a wonderful day. I'm not going to do a long outro. I might, but anyways, everybody enjoy. Thank you.